Hey everyone, it's the Shnakey back again with another video, more Fight Night Champion gameplay today, and I'm attempting to take on what I consider to be the most difficult AI character that I've come across in my 8 years of playing the game, and it is of course Razor Rhodec here. Tommy Morrison actually fought Razor Rhodec and came out the victor out of that fight, but I wanted to pin the two of them together, and I wanted to pick Morrison as well because anyone who plays Fight Night Champion knows that Morrison is not a particularly good character at the heavyweight division. He's rated 84. His defense is quite poor, stamina isn't great, his endurance rating is in the 70s, which is actually really low. So I was originally going to go Butterbean, but I thought it would be more interesting to pick Morrison because, to be honest with you, it's nigh on impossible to beat this character with Butterbean. I was all last night trying to beat him and I just couldn't do it. Butterbean's just too slow, his combinations are too poor, so decided to take a step up to Morrison. So I'll leave the name of the person who created this character down in the description below, and it's only available on Xbox as far as I know because the boxer share is different on each platform. But all the Xbox players out there can definitely have a go at playing against this character. Now what makes this Razor Rhodec so difficult to fight against? Well, the first thing is he doesn't fight in the normal way that the AI fighters in Fight Night Champion fight. He kind of throws single punches a lot more. It's a lot more kind of it's more simulation style. So he doesn't go throwing aimless combinations, which you might think would make him easier to fight against, but in actual fact his power rating is crazy and the majority of the punches that he throws are heavy punches to the body, as you can see. So when I'm trying to fight in the outside here, he keeps clipping me with those straight right hands, and those are very difficult punches to defend against. Anyone who plays online knows that anybody who comes at you with straight punches from the outside, kind of lunges in, you normally will connect to the body unless the character has a really high defense rating, which Morrison doesn't have here. And it's a real shame because Morrison in this game is really poor, and I don't think his rating really reflects the boxer that he was. He definitely had a lot of potential, but there was a lot of wasted potential there. I'd really recommend you go on to some of the better documentary style YouTube channels on boxing, like Boxing Legends TV or Motivedia, and check out the documentaries there on Morrison because they're really good. They'll give you a really good insight into his life. A really interesting character. He actually starred in Rocky V, which, although it was probably the worst Rocky movie, put in a pretty decent performance, and it was cool to see an actual boxer in there. You know, you can tell in the fight scenes, the way he moves his head and the way he moves around the ring and throws punches, that he is actually a real boxer, and the choreography is actually quite good. It's actually a really interesting movie. They've got a Don King type character in there as well, so definitely go and check that out along with the documentaries about Morrison. But yeah, he contracted HIV and actually fought for many years with it, unbeknownst to the boxing commissions. And once they found out then, and once it went public, obviously he had his license revoked and he wasn't allowed to box anymore. But he did make a comeback in the late 2000s, I think it was, to limited success. But then unfortunately he faded away and the HIV took hold and he died there a few years ago. But he left behind a really interesting legacy, and he's overall a very interesting and colourful character. So as you can see here, my strategy with Razor Rhodec is to try and wear him down, and that's really hard to do because he applies insane pressure to you. He's constantly moving forward and very rarely the AI actually moves backwards, and when he pins you in a corner it's very tough to defend against him. And one of the main reasons it's tough to defend against this AI is because, again, with most of the AI characters in the game, it's quite easy to telegraph what they're going to do. You can move your head around in anticipation the punch is coming, but the punch kind of frequency and the tendencies of this AI are really unpredictable. You don't know when he's going to throw punches. As you can see, I don't use a lot of head movement here because early on against this character it's really ineffective to do that, and you'll have very limited success. Now what I actually did was I didn't play it through the whole fight. I don't have the whole fight in the video, and that's just because, as you can see here, I skip ahead to round 6. When I put the video together, it was coming out at like 20 something minutes, and that's just way too long in my opinion for a YouTube video. No one's going to want to sit through a whole fight like this, especially with me talking over it as well. That could irritate people quite quickly, so I decided to cut it up a little bit, and what I did was I transitioned here from round 2 to round 6. So as you can see, as always with Fight Night, and this is always my top tip for anyone that's, you know, jumping into the game now, because this still is a fantastic experience to play, and the servers are still online. So if you have got a 360 or an Xbox One for the backwards compatibility, or a PS3, you can still experience this game, and it's definitely one that you should check out. But when you're fighting in this game, stamina management is absolutely key, and it's something that a lot of newer players won't grasp. They're just going to go in there and try and blast the other person out. And when you come up against better AI characters on the greatest of all time difficulty especially, you're going to find that you're not going to be able to blast them out very quickly, and you're going to need to employ a bit of strategy. Obviously, if you're going to go pick an 100 rated character or Isaac Frost, you're going to be able to do that. But with a character like Morrison here, who is really, really limited in a lot of areas, you really have to be careful. Another problem with Morrison is his power rating isn't absolutely crazy. I find that I mostly wobble characters with the straight right-handed Morrison, which is a bit inaccurate. His left hook should be a lot better. If you know Morrison, you know that he had a crazy left hook, an absolutely unbelievable knockout power in his left hand, and that isn't really reflected here in Fight Night, which is a bit of a disappointment. Razor Rhodec's character here, whoever created him, put a lot of work and time into making his punches heavy. There's a real thud to them, and again, you have to be on top of your game all the time, really, when you're fighting him. So if you haven't experienced the Boxer Share section of Fight Night, I really recommend you go on there and download some of the characters. There's some fantastic models and some fantastic characters on there. There's just been a huge amount of time put into them. You can see some people have really gone into the AI tendencies and made the character fight like their actual real-world counterpart. It's just a shame that there isn't many accurate Tyson Furies, Derek Chisoras, Anthony Joshua's, the big heavyweights at the moment, especially the British heavyweight, because I know this game is going to had back in the day a much bigger player base in the US, where a lot of the time it is going to have, because it's a much bigger country obviously. But yeah, there isn't a lot of the British fighters represented. I even had a hard time getting middleweight legends like Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn, Steve Collins, getting kind of accurate representations of them. There is a Chris Eubank up there, but the face is kind of in a permanent smile, so it looks a bit freaky when you're playing against. You got this guy is smiling through his teeth when you're punching him. Also, Prince Naseem, who I only just finished watching a documentary on there on YouTube. Again, Prince Naseem, featherweight, super featherweight, fantastic entertainer, and really you should check out the before and after clips on YouTube, or the before and after photos of him on Google Images, because his weight has just ballooned. He's like double the size, triple the size that he was, and for such an athletic guy and a guy who was so gifted in that area, it's really unusual to see him kind of go the opposite way. But I know that can happen sometimes. It happened with Ricky Hatton as well. He often had the nickname Ricky Fatten because he had the tendency to balloon up in weight between rounds, or between fights, should I say. So yeah, keeping the pressure on Rhodec here, but as you can see, it's really tough to kind of sustain any punishment on him. And the AI here, just the head movement is fantastic, and also the defense. I think the defense is the biggest thing with this AI, because every punch you throw generally tends to defend them. The only punches I manage to seem to get through with are to the body, and sometimes I'll set him up by hitting him to the body and then hitting to the head as well. So we're in round 7 here, and as you see, round 7 is about to come to an end. And I think here I'm kind of keeping an eye on my stamina as well. So we've actually jumped forward here. What are we in now? Round 9 here. Now in round 9, as you'll see coming up here, I actually managed to hurt Razor with a few punches and get his health down there small. But then out of nowhere, he catches me with a crazy left hand, I think it is, a left hook that puts me on my ass. So let's just see that coming up here. I think it's a few minutes into the round. I like the shorts as well, and I also the face. It seems as though they used a template face from the game, and although it doesn't look 100% like Razor Rhodec, it's definitely acceptable. I mean, from a distance. And in the game itself, they actually have a Razor nickname and Rhodec as a second name. There you go. So I can kind of made him back off there a small bit. But yeah, they obviously used a template face for this, but it came out pretty good. And you can get good results out of some of the template faces. There we go. So he catches me with a right uppercut there. He has me on the back foot, and I start to move back here just to kind of cover up. But again, you can see it's so hard to defend. Normally when I'm rocked like that, I can just pump block, and it's easy to kind of keep them off, get back a bit of stamina. But it's really difficult to do that with this character. My main strategy, as you can see, is I'm backpedaling. I'm fighting kind of quite cleverly, like a bit like how Morrison fought against George Foreman. With George Foreman, Morrison was clever he knew that Foreman still had that crazy power even at his age, so he kind of kept the distance a little bit. Of course, when Michael Moore fought George Foreman, a different style and a different approach that he had, he got complacent in the last few rounds and was ultimately taken out by Foreman. Foreman regaining a world heavyweight title at his age, which is really, really impressive. Don't hear much from George Foreman these days. He still does some commentary on some fights, but I suppose he's getting on in years now as well. But always stayed kind of quite close to the boxing scene. So he catches me there. I get complacent, move in, and he catches me with that left uppercut there that knocks me flat in my ass. Luckily, though, he caught me at the end of the round, so we don't have to try and survive for long. We go straight into the corner again. And in this game, it's quite easy, I find, again, to pump block and defend against an onslaught. When the computer knows they have you down, they'll normally come forward and apply pressure, but very difficult with this AI because his punch tendencies are so unpredictable. Not a very tall character here. Razor Rhodec standing at 6'3", Tommy Morrison standing at 6'2", but to be honest, I don't think there was much in the difference between them. I think Morrison was probably closer to that 6'3" height. A lot of the time you'll get fighters that have a certain height on paper, but when you actually measure them up, they can either be a bit shorter or sometimes a bit taller. So getting a good few punches there in him, being a little bit more aggressive. It's at this stage of the fight now that I kind of realise that I need to put on a bit more pressure, because I'm thinking that the scorecards are quite even though it looks like sometimes I'm doing the more aggressive work or the better work. I may not be landing with all my punches, and his counters can all add up as well. And also I find at Fight Night as well that when you manage to counter with one of those kind of flash counters where the screen flashes for a minute like someone's taking a photo, normally if you can manage to connect with a few of those, the computer judging system or the kind of the punch system, it favours that. So I try and get a few more of those in if I can, but it's very difficult. Moving forward and back, again trying a bit more head movement but not being overly successful. With this character I recommend you just keep your guard up and try and time those punches. In Fight Night, if you don't time your block, if you just hold down the block button, you're going to probably block 2 out of 4 punches. It may block the first 2, but punches will get through. With a character like Morrison who doesn't have a great defense, you need to kind of pump block or time the blocks. So block just as they're about to punch and the block will become a lot more effective. So we've got his health down there and I try and move in to put him down, but then realise instantly that's a very bad idea, because I have had very little success in actually knocking this character down, this Razor Rhodec AI character, with any fighter that's rated below 90 in the heavyweight division. Like a lot of the heavyweight category is, in the 80s. You've got the likes of Vladimir Klitschko, you've got Lennox Lewis, you've got George Foreman. All those fighters are rated at 80, and even though Klitschko has a good physical advantage, it's a long reach, it can be harder to knock out an opponent like this or an AI character. There's other characters that are rated higher, like Ali is 93, and his AI is quite clever. I think they did fall flat a little bit with some of the AI of the characters, especially brawler characters in this game. They aren't particularly effective. I can create 100 rated with the character has everything at 100 and give him a brawling style, and it just falls flat on its feet. It also depends as well on the type of block that you use and the actual style that you have. So there's different styles in this game. You've got like speed, balanced, slickster, all of those, and what they and there's like a mummy one that George Foreman uses. They all actually come with different advantages, and it's not really explained in the game manual what each one does, but each of them have got their own advantages in terms of defense and attack as well. So Rhodec is slowing down here. Razor is he's running out of ideas, but at the same time he's still extremely dangerous and still coming forward as well. Also, I've managed to cut him, but I think he has also cut me as well. Cuts don't mean a huge amount in this game. It normally just leads to more damage, and you can stop people with cuts. I think they've rebalanced the game, around 3 or 4 years into it being out. They balanced it up quite a bit where the actual punches would add up and eventually you could get a stoppage from a cut. So weaving in underneath my left hook there. I haven't been very effective at getting that left hook to land on this Razor Rhodec character. Knocked him back there with a few. So we're having a lot more success, but again, he is trying to trap me in the corner and put pressure on me. So we're going into the last round. We're in round 12 now. We're deep into the championship rounds, and my aim here is, I'm not 100% sure where I am on the scorecards. I have a feeling the fight could be very close or even a draw at this stage. So we need to take this home. I need to apply a bit more pressure. So you can see here, I try to apply a tiny bit more pressure but still be effective at the same time, because if he ends up weaving out of the way of one of my punches and catches me with a counter, he will put me down and that will be the end of the fight. I will get up from it, but I have a feeling it's a draw, or maybe I'm up 1 on the scorecard, and I want the win in this fight. So, and that's the great thing about this character. If you're downloading an Xbox, try it out. It gives you a completely different experience in fighting it. I've been playing the game for so long that, you know, fighting the AI is a little bit boring at this stage because it's quite predictable. Where with this character, it's like a whole new game. It's a lot more simulation based. You have to pick your punches a lot more, and it's not crazy combinations. Because in boxing, boxers do throw combinations, but for the majority of the fight, a lot of the time, it can be single punches, especially in the early on in the fight when you're feeling the other person out. You know, boxers don't go in there throwing crazy combinations all the time. We'll catch him with another nice punch there, but he returns. I'm trying to use movement as well. I'm constantly moving with Marson, and I'm also wary of where I am in the ring. I do not want to be pinned in against those ropes. I need to be moving, and quite happily this character will pin you off from the center of the ring. He'll take center of the ring and move you into the ropes like he's doing there, and land with those big heavy body shots. And even though I'm trying to block them as best as I can, they still are getting through. So a successful round here, catch him with a few more punches there. Stamina is not looking good. I'm glad that we're in the final round here, because if I had applied more pressure early on, I definitely would have gassed out at this stage and wouldn't have been effective at all. We're coming into the last 10 seconds of the fight here now, and I try and rally at home a little bit. More body shots. And there we go. There's the final bell, little taunt at the end. Tommy Morrison versus Razor Rhodec. And the most difficult AI that I have faced by far. So we can see here the result. The judges seem to think that's a lot closer than it really is, or a lot further out than it really is. Seem to think I won by a landslide, but there you go, Tommy Morrison, the victor in that fight against the most difficult AI that I have faced. I'll leave the name of the person who created this down in the description for you if you want to check it out. If you want more Fight Night videos, let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you like my content, and I'll see you in the next video, guys.